My name is Rebecca, but everyone calls me Reba. I'm 22 years old, and last week everything changed when I won a lawsuit that granted me $5 million. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the letter from the court, my hands trembling as I processed the reality of it. $5 million, it felt surreal. The numbers on that piece of paper didn't seem real. I'd never imagined such an amount of money in my life, let alone being the recipient of it. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I rechecked the figures, the details, anything to make sense of it, but it was real. So the weight of it all started to settle in. It wasn't just money, it was a new life. No more debts, no more struggling to make ends meet. I could finally breathe without that looming pressure. For the first time, I felt a sense of freedom, but as the adrenaline wore off, something else crept into my thoughts. This win, this life-altering victory, had the potential to change more than just my financial situation. It could change relationships, ones I'd spent years building. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment and tell me what your first thought would be if you won $5 million. And before I go on, hit like and subscribe for more real stories about self-discovery, family, and the tough decisions life throws at us. This is only the beginning. The money had barely settled in my bank account when the call came. It was my brother. I could feel the excitement in his voice as he spoke, but there was something else, something that didn't sit right. "You're rich now, man," he said, his tone almost like he was celebrating my victory alongside me. "I know it's a lot, but, we've been through a lot together. It's only fair, right? I mean, you've got $5 million now, and I'm your brother. Half of that should come my way." The words hung in the air, thick with disbelief. I thought I misheard him at first. Did he really just say that? Half my mind raced, and I felt a cold rush of confusion flood over me. We'd grown up together, struggled together, and supported each other through everything. But I never imagined he would think he had a claim to my legal victory. "Don't get me wrong. I'm happy for you," he continued, as if trying to soften the blow. "But, it's only fair." It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. I couldn't bring myself to agree with him, yet the thought of saying no felt almost impossible. How could I betray my brother's trust in me? How did I even begin to respond? When I hung up the phone, I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the words still echoing in my head. My brother, the person I had always looked out for, had just made a demand that shook me to my core. Half of my winnings. It wasn't about the money, it was about something deeper, something that cut through the heart of our relationship. I kept replaying the conversation over and over, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of joke? Maybe he was testing me to see how I'd react. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he wasn't joking. He was serious. I felt betrayed not because he wanted money, but because of the expectation he had placed on me. It was as if everything we'd been through together, the years of supporting each other, the struggles, the sacrifices, meant nothing now. All of it was overshadowed by the desire to claim a piece of something that wasn't his. I tried to push aside the anger, but it lingered. Was I being selfish for not wanting to give him half? Or was this a moment where I had to finally stand up for myself? It wasn't easy, and I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me more than I had ever felt before. For the next few days, I couldn't think about anything else. My mind was consumed by that conversation, and every time I tried to distract myself, it came rushing back. On one hand, I loved my brother deeply. We'd been through so much together, family struggles, financial hardships, and the shared dreams we'd once had. But on the other hand, this wasn't just about love. This was about what felt right. And in my heart, something felt very wrong. I kept asking myself, is loyalty to family worth sacrificing my own peace and sense of fairness? Would I be forever haunted by the guilt of not doing what my brother expected? Or would I always resent him for thinking he had a claim to something that wasn't his? The thoughts kept spiraling. The more I analyzed it, the more complicated everything seemed. I wasn't just protecting the money, I was protecting my boundaries. I had worked hard for this victory. I had fought for it, stayed up countless nights, and sacrificed more than anyone knew. And now, it felt like my brother was trying to take something I had earned. But could I say no? Was it even possible to refuse him without tearing our relationship apart? These questions felt like a weight I couldn't shake off, and I realized I wasn't just facing a financial dilemma, was facing a personal crisis of loyalty versus justice. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. My brother, who had been relentless in his demand for half, escalated the situation in a way I hadn't seen coming. One afternoon, he called again, his voice colder this time. "You know," he started, "if you don't do what's right, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. This is about fairness, and I won't back down. I'll sue you if I have to." The words hit me like a slap. I had expected a lot of things: disagreement, maybe even anger, but this felt like a betrayal of the highest order. My brother, the person I'd always trusted, was now threatening to sue me over money. It wasn't just about him wanting half of my winnings anymore. It was about him using the legal system to force my hand. In that moment, everything changed. The person I thought I knew, the one I had grown up with, had crossed a line I never expected. My heart raced with a mix of emotions: anger, frustration, confusion. How had it come to this? How had money, something I never thought I'd have, turned everything I knew upside down? I stood there trying to make sense of it all. Had to decide, was I going to let this get out of hand, or was I going to put a stop to it no matter the cost? The days that followed were filled with a storm of emotions. I couldn't escape that tension. It was like a weight pressing down on me, making everything harder to breathe through. Every time I saw my brother, I felt that invisible wall between us grow taller. The warm bond we had once shared felt strained. Distant, he had crossed a line, and I wasn't sure how to get back from it. I found myself questioning everything. Was I doing the right thing by refusing his demand? Was I being too stubborn, too prideful? On the other hand, the thought of just giving in felt wrong too. I had fought so hard for this money, for this life-changing win. Was I supposed to just give it away because someone else felt entitled to it? It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about boundaries, respect, and what I was willing to stand for. I was at a breaking point. Felt like the relationship I had with my brother, the trust we once had, was slipping through my fingers. The emotional toll was heavy. I couldn't let this go on. Something had to give. I sat alone one night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, who was I really trying to protect, my brother or myself? At this point, I knew I needed help. The emotional toll was heavy, and I couldn't navigate this on my own. I reached out to a lawyer, hoping to find clarity, someone who could tell me exactly what my rights were, what my options were, and what the consequences of my brother's threats might be. The consultation was eye-opening, but it only complicated things further. The lawyer explained that, legally, I wasn't obligated to share the money with anyone. It was mine, plain and simple. But what I hadn't anticipated was the emotional weight of the situation. The lawyer warned me that if my brother followed through on his threat, it could drag me through a lengthy legal battle, which would cost both time and money. More than that, it could permanently alter my relationship with him. Hearing this made everything feel so much more real. The legal aspects were clear, but what about the personal cost? Could I really follow through with cutting ties with my own brother over money? The decision weighed heavily on me. The advice was clear, but my heart wasn't. I knew I had to protect myself. But could I live with the fallout? I left the meeting feeling even more torn. I had the information I needed, but I still felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, not sure whether to jump or walk away. The moment of clarity didn't come easily, but it came when I least expected it. I sat in my living room one quiet evening, my thoughts swirling. I had all the facts, now the legal advice, the emotional struggle, and the weight of my brother's betrayal hanging heavily in the air. I realized something. This wasn't just about the lawsuit or the money anymore. It was about something much deeper, about who I was, what I stood for, and what boundaries I was willing to set. I knew that my brother's request was unreasonable, and that the legal advice I had gotten was in my favor. But it wasn't just about being right. It was about protecting my peace and my future. This wasn't just a battle over money. It was a battle over respect, self-worth, and the right to make decisions that felt true to me. I had spent so long compromising for the sake of family, always putting others' needs above my own. But now I had to ask myself, was it worth losing my integrity to keep the peace? I reached a point where I realized that my peace was more important than anything else, more important than my brother's demand or the fear of conflict. I had to make a decision, and it had to come from a place of strength, not guilt. This was my life, my win, and my future. It was time to stand firm, no matter the consequences. The decision was made, but it wasn't easy. The next day, I called my brother. I could feel my heart racing as I dialed his number, knowing that this conversation would change everything. When he picked up, I took a deep breath and said, "We need to talk." "I'm listening," he replied, his voice guarded. "I've thought about it a lot." I began trying to keep my voice steady, and I can't give you half. This money is mine. I earned it. It's not about being selfish or trying to hurt you. It's about setting boundaries for both of us. There was a long pause on the other end, and when he spoke again, his voice was sharp. "You don't get it, do you? You wouldn't have one without me. I've always been there for you. You owe me." I felt a wave of frustration, but I stood my ground. "No, I don't owe you half. I've always supported you, and I always will. But this is where I draw the line." The silence was deafening. I could feel the weight of the words hanging between us. "I'm sorry, but this is where I stand." We ended the call, and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. I knew the rift between us had deepened, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had taken control of my own life. I had set a boundary that I knew was necessary, even if it meant hurting someone I loved. And though the guilt lingered, I knew I had made the right choice. In the days that followed, things were tense. My brother and I didn't speak for a while. The weight of the decision I had made hung over me like a dark cloud. But as the days turned into weeks, something began to shift within me. I started to realize that while family is incredibly important, my sense of self-worth, my boundaries, and my peace of mind mattered more. Money had always been a source of stress and uncertainty for me, but in this moment, it became a tool for something deeper. It was a lesson in not letting others define my worth, and in learning that it's okay to say no, even to those you love most. Sometimes, doing what's right for yourself is the hardest thing you can do, but it's also the most empowering. As for my brother, the space we took allowed us both to reflect. We eventually talked again, and while the conversation was difficult, it led to a better understanding between us. We didn't agree on everything, but we had more respect for each other's perspectives. The real lesson, though, wasn't about money. It was about finding the strength to protect my peace, my integrity, and to recognize when a relationship needs to evolve in order to grow. I learned that family doesn't always mean giving up everything for someone else. Sometimes it means knowing when to stand firm for yourself.